The party was already in full swing when I arrived, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a golden hue over the elegantly dressed crowd. I had expected my wife, Clara, to greet me with a warm smile, maybe even a playful hug, but when I stepped into the grand hall, she didn't so much as glance in my direction. Her laughter floated across the room, light and melodious, as she leaned into another man, talking with an ease that made my stomach churn. I told myself to stay calm. Maybe she didn't see me yet. Maybe she was just caught up in conversation. But deep down, the pit in my stomach grew, each beat echoing the tension that had been simmering between us for months. I moved through the crowd, nodding at acquaintances, making small talk, but Clara's eyes never met mine. It wasn't just that she ignored me. It was that she seemed to flaunt it, the way her hand lingered on the man's arm, the way her lips curved into a smile meant for someone else. I wanted to confront her right there, but something held me back. I wasn't sure if it was fear, pride, or the desire to see just how far she would go. That's when it happened. A man I had never met before approached me, dressed in a crisp tuxedo, a charming grin on his face. "Since you're single tonight," he said, tilting his head toward Clara without naming her, "would you care to dance?" The words hit me like a shockwave. Single. Tonight. It wasn't just a polite suggestion. It was a deliberate jab, a social confirmation of the humiliation I had been silently enduring. My mind raced. Did he know about us? Had he been watching the same thing I had been watching? Or was it simply the cruel luck of circumstance? I forced a smile, a calm exterior I didn't feel, and nodded. "Sure," I said, letting him lead me to the center of the dance floor. Music swirled around us, a slow waltz that demanded closeness. Yet I felt miles away from the man beside me, from the laughter at the edges of the room, from Clara herself. I focused on the rhythm, trying to anchor myself in the movement, but my eyes kept darting back to her. She hadn't noticed me, or if she had, she was pretending not to. Her hand brushed lightly against the other man's chest, and my chest tightened. Halfway through the song, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. Here I was, dancing with a stranger who had inadvertently handed me the opportunity one didn't know I wanted. I could let this night be a slow humiliation, a parade of my wife's indifference, or I could reclaim a small piece of dignity, right here, right now. The stranger's eyes met mine in the mirror-lined wall, a silent understanding passing between us. He didn't care whose story I had, and I didn't care about his. I was only reclaiming the narrative of my evening. By the third song, whispers started circulating. Some guests noticed the shift. The way I moved with confidence, the way I held my head high, ignoring Clara entirely. It wasn't just a dance anymore. It was a statement. I caught Clara's gaze across the floor, the moment brief but electric. Her smile faltered just slightly, as if she realized for the first time that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't humiliated beyond repair. That small flicker of uncertainty in her eyes was worth the tension of the entire night. Then, just as the song ended, the stranger leaned in and whispered, "Enjoy your night." And with a polite nod, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me standing alone in the center of the dance floor. I didn't need him anymore. I had realized that the embarrassment I had feared wasn't in the room. It was in my mind. The real betrayal, the real sting, had been in Clara's behavior. And yet, I was no longer willing to let her dictate the story. I walked toward the bar, deliberately brushing past Clara, who now seemed to notice me for the first time. Her eyes widened, but I didn't speak, didn't offer an explanation, didn't seek reconciliation. She opened her mouth, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to justify, but I merely shook my head ever so slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the damage done. As I poured myself a drink, I noticed a few guests stealing glances, whispering among themselves. I had become, unintentionally, the center of attention. But this time, it wasn't humiliating, it was empowering. Each step I took through the party, each subtle nod to a familiar face, reinforced the idea that I was in control of my evening, my image, and ultimately my life. Later, I found Clara standing near the balcony, the night air blowing strands of her hair across her face. She looked at me, her eyes searching, vulnerable for the first time all night. I stopped a few feet away, letting the silence stretch between us. She wanted words, an explanation, a plea, maybe even an argument, but I offered none of it. The moment had passed, and with it, the power she had thought she held. "I didn't know you were dancing," she said finally, her voice small, almost fragile. "I'm full of surprises," I replied, my tone calm, almost detached. And in that moment, I realized that the dance, the single dance of that evening, had been more than a simple movement to the music. It had been a reclaiming of myself, a subtle but irrevocable statement that I would no longer be ignored, sidelined, or diminished. The party ended hours later, but the night had already made its mark. Clara's attempts to reconnect, to justify, to explain, all fell flat against the silent strength I had gathered in those few dances. I had seen the truth of her attention, the fickle nature of her loyalty, and I had discovered, quite unexpectedly, a piece of myself I had thought long lost. As I left the grand hall, the cool night air hitting my face, I realized that some humiliations could become triumphs. Some betrayals could become awakenings. Clara might have ignored me at the party, but I had emerged from it fully seen, not by her, but by myself. And that, in the end, was enough.